Good morning. Isn't it wonderful to hear that little prayer from George Harrison? Maybe the sun is coming back. Maybe the long dark of the pandemic is going to lift. Let's assume that, and let's let ourselves be full of courage in this time when we're on the cusp between fear and darkness and a return to some kind of normal life. And with that, I light our flame. Just like us, we add this infinitesimally small amount of light to the sunlit day. So this morning we hold out our own chalice, the chalice of our cupped hands, to give, to receive, and to carry back. We bring our own joys, our own sorrows, our own gifts, our own needs to this, the home of our religious community. So let's not let our minds be shuttered as we receive the light without. Let it not lessen the light within. And may our giving be such that we shed light also into the darkened corners of this world. I've often thought that, good morning, welcome. I've often thought that the real preachers of this age are not standing in pulpits, they're standing in little stages and little comedy clubs. That some of our finest preachers are actually stand-up comedians. And one of those certainly was somebody I thought a lot of. It was George Carlin. And I've asked Jill to read a bit that I found on the internet by George Carlin.
The paradox of our time in history is that we have taller buildings but shorter tempers, wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. We spend more but have less. We buy more but enjoy less. We have bigger houses and smaller families, more conveniences but less time. We have more degrees but less sense, more knowledge but less judgment, more experts yet more problems, more medicine but less wellness. We've learned how to make a living but not a life. We've added years to life, not life to years. We've been all the way to the moon, but have trouble crossing the street to meet a new neighbor. We conquered outer space, but not inner space. We've done larger things, but not better things. Remember this. Spend some time with your loved ones, because they are not going to be around forever. Remember this. Say a kind word to someone who looks up to you in awe, because that little person soon will grow up and leave your side. Remember this. Give a warm hug to the one next to you, because that is the only treasure you can give with your heart, and it doesn't cost a cent. Remember to say, I love you, to your partner and to your loved ones, but most of all, mean it. A kiss and an embrace will mend hurt when it comes from deep inside. Give time to love. Give time to speak. And give time to share the precious thoughts in your mind. Warning. If you don't send this message to at least 8 people, who cares?
All ready to go? Are you ready to go with me? Let's put our feet flat on the floor now and relax. As we compose ourselves, we find ourselves once again wrapped in this mystery we refer to as prayer. This morning, let us allow ourselves to engage with this act with attentiveness. All that energy which we spend in diversion, let us use now in concentration. The restless urgings of our minds, let them give way to quiet acceptance. And as we pray, let us find ourselves willing, despite our recurrent unbelief, just to sit in the presence of mystery, without preconditions, without protection, without cynicism, as we address the brightest and most elusive ideal our fellow beings can conceive of. One Spirit whose true name has never been uttered. We simply ask for the gift of prayer, knowing that it is the destination as well as the beginning. For we would relinquish the weight of our addictions, our prejudices, and our pride. We would let go our carefully carved toeholds on the ascent of life and find ourselves held kindly by the universe. We would allow our self-protectiveness to yield to concern for others. We would turn the bright light of honesty onto the pettiness we have so well concealed. We would surrender our worries about health, about money, about the opinions others have of us. We would give up our need to make others what they are not. We would abandon our need to make of you what you are not. We would ask for the gift of prayer with carefully chosen words. And we would ask for the gift of prayer beyond words, as the fading tones of our bell now conduct us once again into the good silence. Now let the silence leave the realm of mere sound and nestle in our hearts as we resume our chosen journeys through this world, with all its demands of living and growing. May that still small voice not quite heard whisper to us in all our ways, in all our days. Bright sustainer of the traveler, one God of peace and comfort, and equally of task and turmoil. Stay near us. So be it. In Inshallah. Shalom. Amen. Wow, Jill, that's lovely. What's the name of it?
It's Symphony Number 7. It's the second movement of Beethoven's Symphony Number 7.
Yay, Beethoven. I don't know about you, but I try not to get too upset with all the foolish things I see going on around me. It seems like during the pandemic, when our main window on the world was a telly, we've actually seen more than our share of them. One thing in particular stood out for me, made me want to scream. And luckily, now I see that it's been taken off. It's an advert by BASF, you know them? It's a gigantic chemical conglomerate, multinational. And they make a lot of those things you use to get rid of COVID viruses around your kitchen and so on. So I guess they began to concentrate on other stuff. But one of the things they had up for a very long time was this lovely sort of pastoral setting of lovely hills and lakes and trees and some nice tinkling music in the background. And you thought, well, this must be one of those adverts for, those comparison websites. But no, a voice comes on and says, if love is a chemical reaction. You remember that? If love is a chemical reaction, then, now being a giant chemical conglomerate, it's only a matter of time before some bright spark in an ad agency came up with that misused idea about chemistry between two people. But this bland comment, which we often use, has got a deeper edge to it. Because what the ad was implying is that love is about brain chemistry and nothing else. As we get more sophisticated in our scientific techniques, we're able more and more to observe what goes on in the human brain. We discover new enzymes and hormones and, yes, chemicals. Following tiny electrical impulses with digital equipment straight out of Doctor Who, we can measure and record the effect of those chemicals on us. And then in logical sequence, we learn how to make some of these chemicals. And bang, presto, we can stick them in your arm or feed them into your brain and decide how you're going to feel. We can make somebody happy, sleepy, dopey, any one of the 7 dwarfs that you like, sneezy even. If you're depressed, there's a chemical that'll help you. Yes, it really will help you. If you're lethargic, another one will make you more active and more engaged with the world. If you're just not in a party mood, we can provide a sensation quite easily of ecstasy, and even call it that. Most of that is, in fact, welcome. It's a big help. You don't want people jumping off of buildings because they're too sad to get through the day. And if a little chemical will help, well, okay, you say, what's wrong with that? We need to use whatever we can to make things better. That's what we human beings have always done, more or less. But the underside of that advance is a new and frightening idea. And that idea is that the highest and most sublime experiences do not spring from somewhere that is itself high and sublime, but from a mix of chemicals. In other words, everything is artificial. Everything can be subject to manipulation. Well, now I'm going to tell you something I've told some of you before. I got away with it then. I'll see if I get away with it this time. We're broadcasting it. In my youth, back in the 1960s, I took drugs. I took quite a lot of drugs. Not the recreational drugs that people condemn all the time, not heroin or cocaine, certainly not the little pills you can buy in any dance club in London. When I was just 20, I took a massive dose of peyote, the hallucinogen derived from a cactus that was the inspiration of Don Juan, some of you might have read, the Mexican guru. And I experienced something that is quite literally beyond description. It's beyond description, but I'm going to try anyway. I didn't know what I was getting into. I think I imagined I'd see fluffy pink gorillas in some sort of technicolor jungle or something like that. What happened to me was, well, for a few hours I was very nauseated. And then I got the idea that I was going to die. And I wrote a mental note that begged forgiveness of everyone I had ever offended, quite a long list, left my few possessions to a couple of friends, and signed off. But before I could finish, I realized that I was, in some sense that defies explanation, already dead. I was suspended in the air near the roof of an enormous cathedral, held up by beams of light that streamed from stained glass windows of unbelievable color and beauty. I saw myself as part of what I think of as pure consciousness. And I soon realized that the same consciousness was not only in everybody else, but that we were all composed of this same consciousness. And how was I feeling? Well, to say joy wouldn't begin to describe it. That's about as far as the English language can take me, though. Joy, and okay, love. It took about 6 hours before I began to see that I was actually crouched on the floor of my dormitory room. I had missed lectures, meals, telephone messages. A friend came round. I spent a half hour trying to explain to him what had happened to me. The following morning, I felt okay. I went back to class. I saw my friends. I did all the normal things. But I was different. I'm still different. What followed was a marathon effort of reading. People like William James and Varieties of Religious Experience that he wrote, writers like Alan Watts, Zen masters like D.T. Suzuki, even Western saints like Teresa and John of the Cross. I was obsessed with the idea that I had had an experience that was not unknown to these people in the literature, an experience sometimes called mystical. I met other people who had shared the experience. I began taking LSD. I saw Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert. Give me a hand with that. Sorry, my microphone is betraying me here. Not part of my same universal consciousness. It's that thing. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, in later years, I learned that the teacher, Meher Baba, about whom I talk quite a lot, maybe you think too much, had called these experiences a kind of a sample or taster of what really goes on when somebody is having a sublime, a true mystical experience. But then these words. He said, if God can be found through taking a pill, then God is not worthy of being God. In other words, yes, if you had analyzed my brain chemistry in that moment and analyzed the brain chemistry of a mystic in their moment, there would have been similarities in terms of hormones. The difference is that the mystic had earned his or her way there through many years of experience and devotion and meditation, whereas I was something like a tourist. I just jumped the gun and tweaked the chemistry in my head without earning my way there. Well, when I heard that, I realized that Meher Baba was right. I stopped taking psychedelic drugs. And that's the reason I hate that BASF advert. If there any realistic way of boycotting their products, I would do it, but there isn't. We're living in a time in which science has gained the upper hand. Books like The Selfish Gene attempt to explain such things as like love as a result of mere genetic codes that prompt our brains to care about our offspring, because that's a survival strategy for the species. Richard Dawkins sounds apologetic. He almost sounds wistful as he disposes of millennia of poetry, religious experience, and self-sacrifice. The underlying mantra is this: if something cannot be scientifically verified, cannot be weighed and measured, then it cannot be said to exist. In philosophy, this is called materialism, not the word we use for wanting to buy a new car. If a feeling of love or ecstasy can be mimicked by giving an injection or a stimulus with an electrode, then that, by scientific logic, proves that, you know what, that's all that is. That's all it is, just a little chemical change. Just a tweaking of the forebrain. These are the same guys, by the way, who regularly burgle our simple experiences of something special. Sunset. Sunset. That's merely dust motes trapped in the atmosphere. That's what that is. A baby's gurgle of recognition for their mother, that's merely a biological prompting caused by a gene, which we can probably find, isolate, and name. Stirring music like hymns, they're merely the sonic activation of serotonin molecules in the cerebrum. But even as they give us this bad news, they attempt to make it all better by standing on a mountaintop in one of those TV science programs, waving their arms toward the starry sky and saying, "Isn't that enough?" Well, no, it's not. Let's go back to that interesting little clue that Meher Baba was giving us, the difference between inside and outside. By outside, I mean everything you can weigh or measure and explain purely by scientific means. By inside, I mean a reality that's been hinted at by legions of sages and saints throughout history, a separate reality that coincides with the one we can see and feel, but is not dependent upon it. I mean, there's a difference between the mind and the brain. The brain is a mass of tissue, a fantastically sophisticated organic computer. The mind, however, is the source of consciousness. If you do something to the brain by injuring it, get sick, have a stroke, use drugs, yes, it affects that mass of tissue, but it does not affect what I'm referring to as the mind, which lies behind it. All it does is distort the function of the mind operating in the physical world through that organ. The eyes and ears, indeed the whole body, are means by which the mind, that awareness that makes us us, experiences the world. All right, Art, so why aren't we aware of this other reality that you're talking about? And I would say you are fully aware of it, that what you think of as your life is dependent upon it. Things like love. Love is the awareness, however feeble it might be, of oneness. It's diminution of the isolated self, the sense that you are in some way living in two centers. Do you know what I mean? That attraction is the attraction of something to its own self, where the boundaries of me intermingle with those of thee. Being determined to find simple explanations for things like love, some scientists are mining the brain for something they call the God gland. Because materialistic thinking leads them to believe that anything at all that might happen certainly has got to have a physical explanation. So they're looking in there in your brain. They're hoping to find this thing that throughout all cultures and throughout all eras has made people believe that there's something greater than themselves. So far, these brain miners have had no luck. But even if they do find it tucked into the hypothalamus or somewhere like that, it's not going to change anything. The gulf between inside and outside will still rule. Okay. So here's a poser. If you were God, how would you design your universe? Would you make your existence provable in a science lab? Would you lay down tablets of stone that only had to be read and obeyed, and that would solve all the problems of existence? Or instead, would you make human beings so that they had to leave behind their little toys of description and do a search the hard way through the heart? Would you leave the instruction manual on the outside, or would you tuck it away inside, where only real pilgrims would look for it? If love is a chemical reaction, drones that adverb. If love is a chemical reaction that is merely a chemical reaction, then God is not only non-existent, he's not worthy of being God. Amen. Let you in on a secret. This is the biggest congregation we've had in 14 months. You should look around and congratulate yourselves and each other. We actually are hoping to see an even bigger one next week. I know we're going to be missing Pauline, but Center Parks gains and we lose.
Yeah, I used to love the flower communion.
Yeah.
And what I do love is flower communion. And if someone could put me one flower in.
We'll do that for you, I promise. And we'll film it. And you can watch it.
I would like it in memory of Tony.
Okay.
Tony, yeah, please.
Okay.
We have to do for the next week, bring a flower.
Bring a flower. Bring prettiest flower you can lay hand to. Even if you pick a daisy from the lawn, that's fine. Bring it, and what we do is we put them in a common vase. I want you to note I'm saying vase, even though I'm American, not saying vase. We put them in a common vase, and we talk about how this service came into being. It came into being because of one of our great heroes, Dr. Norbert Čapek, the Czech minister, author, who became a martyr of the Nazis toward the end of the war and was murdered in prison. He designed the service for his very varied congregation, which we also have, all different belief structures. So we put all our flowers in the vase. After the service, we all take home a different flower than the one we brought. And we're hoping to get loads of people here. Let's see if we do. We'll have a few flowers around. You can pick one out in case you forget, but please try to come if you can. That's next Sunday. Good. Yeah, we're going to have coffee afterwards, just almost like in the old days. And let's congratulate ourselves for coming and for not being afraid. So now we're going to blow out our candle. It's now extinguished, but the flame that we brought in us shines on. And the words we've spoken, they're over. The song's notes going to be stilled, but our hearts can remain open now. Open as we turn to depart. And so may we go safely, and may we go cheerfully, and may we go full of strength. And for this, may we look after one another, because we know we can, until we meet again. Amen.